Okay guys, welcome back to game 2 of the top 4 from the Glendale, Wisconsin Battle Road between myself and Chris Dreksler on the right. And the first game, it was a pretty straightforward game between my Vanillix deck versus his Darkrai deck. I set up before he can really put on too much pressure, and when that happens, the Vanillix Vileplume deck just kind of double freezes its way to victory. So in this game, we'll see if things are a little different, and we'll see what kind of a start he gets this time. He is going first. He gets to choose who goes first because he did lose the first game. So we'll see if this turns out any differently. Now, he does play a random receiver, which you flip over the top card of your deck over and over until you reveal a supporter, and then it goes into your hand, and you shuffle in the rest of the cards. So he did get an N off of his random receiver, which it looks like that was the only other supporter in his hand, so he will be playing that this turn, which actually is going to shuffle away my nearly perfect hand. I have a Pokemon collector, rare candy, and a communication in my starting hand, but if he plays an N, I will get to use none of those. And yeah, looks like he will use the N. I apologize, looks like we have a bit of a lighting issue going on, but you can still see the field, so that's a good thing. But I do throw a water energy at my opponent. Poor shuffling on my part. Card flies out. And we get that all settled. So, we're both going to shuffle in our hands and draw 6 new cards. Draw 1 for each of your prize cards. And we'll see what I get this time. Now, the first card's a Tropical Beach, so I know it can't be that bad. And I get a Pokemon collector, so this is still going to be a pretty good start for me, I think. As long as my opponent doesn't do anything crazy like get a turn 1 Darkrai off, which is extremely unlikely right now, I'm going to be just fine. And he does have a dual ball. Looks like he's going to get both heads. Okay, so we'll search for 2 Pokemon. He's already played a supporter, so a turn 1 Darkrai is almost impossible with 6 cards. You would need like 3 Dark Energy, Junk Arm, Dark Patch. I don't even know. You would actually have to have like a dual ball to get yourself an extra card to discard with the junk. I don't even know how it would work. I don't think you can do it off 6 cards. Someone figure that out for me. I'm not going to do it right now. I'm going to embarrass myself trying to figure this out right now. But he does play dual ball, gets a Darkrai and a Smeargle. He has an energy search in his hand as well, so he will use another dual ball. This is a common tactic against a Vileplume deck. You will not be able to use your trainer cards once Vileplume's Allergy Flower comes into effect, so you want to play them now. Get them out of your hand so you don't have to worry about having them in your hand later. And he grabs a Terrakion, which is not a bad idea. Terrakion's not especially good against Vanillix, because just like Darkrai, it only does 90 damage, but the benefit it has is it's not an EX. So, normally what would happen is I would just knock out 3 Darkrai's, and I would win, because it's 2 prizes. It's up to 6. But with Terrakion thrown in there, I have to knock out 1 extra Pokemon, because I'll knock out a Darkrai, that's 2. Knock out another Darkrai, that's 4. And then if I knock out a Terrakion, that's only 5 prizes, and then he can actually promote another Darkrai. So, Terrakion's actually pretty neat. It's good of him to use it. And he's going to go ahead and Portrait. And see, I have a Collector or a Seeker. And really, those are not cards he wanted to use because, well, he just used Dual Ball and got a bunch of basics. He does not need to get any more, but he figures, hey, thinning out my deck is better than using Seeker. So, he is just going to Collector, grab Shaman, Smeargle, and Darkrai. Now, this could end up backfiring if his only supporter is a Professor Juniper, because he would then have to discard all of those Pokemon, but otherwise, it's good to just thin out your deck. So right now, I'm feeling alright, because I don't feel like any early pressure's coming, at least definitely not on the first turn. And yeah, I do have that collector in my hand and a Tropical Beach. So it's looking alright. Now my opponent benches a third Darkrai, which I don't really agree with. It's just kind of clogging up your bench for no reason. But that's okay. Might not end up mattering. And here I'm going to play Collector. Probably just going to grab a couple Vanillites. And we'll go from there. I did have a second Oddish in my hand. I think I drew that for the turn. But I must not have realized that because I'm grabbing a third Oddish for some reason. Now, I have the Tropical Beach in my hand, but I don't have any supporters beyond my Collector. Seeker doesn't really count as a supporter because it's not a draw supporter. So I think I'm actually going to Communication, shuffle in that other Oddish, and we'll grab something else, just so I can draw more cards off of Tropical Beach. So, Tropical Beach is a nice card in this deck, because there are a couple turns where you're just not going to be doing anything. I only play one because you don't really need it that much, but in a pinch, you can Twins for Tropical Beach. Say all you have is like a one-card hand and it's a Twins. You can refill up to 7 just like that. So, Tropical Beach is nice in slower decks because, well, you're going to have a lot of turns where you don't do anything because your deck is so slow. So I'm going to go ahead and grab Smeargle, just anticipating the fact that I could end up with nothing really happening in my hand, and I want a way out. So Portrait would be that way out. So I'm going to Tropical Beach to draw 5, and draw a decent hand, nothing too great. I have 2 Vanillishes in my hand, which is actually pretty nice. But beyond that, I don't have any way to get a Vileplume into play, which could be a problem. And right now, my opponent plays a Junk Arm, gets rid of a Dark Energy, and he's going to go for Random Receiver. He might have realized that. Oh, and he gets an N. So there we go. He might have realized that, I used Collector to get my Shaman, and then I want a Juniper, which is not a good combination. You don't want to discard that Shaman because it can be really useful, especially against Vanilluxe, because even though your Pokemon inevitably gets knocked out by Double Freeze, it's very slow. So you can actually just take a turn when it's paralyzed and move all the energy off to save it. So Shaman's very important to have. My opponent values that very much, so he decides to use the N as well. And that was especially good because I just used Tropical Beach to draw up to 7. So he's going to knock me back down to 6. And I actually had a decent hand off of that. And now my hand's pretty bad. So we will see if my opponent can pull off some attack this turn. He really needs to. He needs to get something going. Now the other bad thing for my opponent is that I didn't get a supporter besides Collector, so Portrait wouldn't have done much, but he didn't actually use Portrait, so that was actually probably a good thing because he can now, he didn't want to risk getting rid of the switch in his hand. That's what I was trying to get at. Sorry, I had a brain fart there. But he didn't want to risk, like, seeing an N in my hand, or something like that, and then having to shuffle his hand back in, and then have no way to get his Smeargle onto the bench. That would have been worst case scenario for him. So, right here, he does just play the switch, catches out an Oddish, and gets a knockout there. So, he decides to do 30 to a Vanillite as well. And right now I have some decisions to make. I could Portrait. There's a risk involved, though, because if I Portrait and there's a Juniper there, then I would have to discard that Vanilluxe, so I'm going to Communication, and I think I'm just going to grab a Vanillish, and I actually put it down on the wrong one. I should have evolved the one with 30 on it. And then actually say, oops. Should not have played it directly. You really should not play cards directly onto your Pokemon when you play stuff like Communication, because, you should probably think about it first. Example right there. And so I do evolve the correct Vanillish, thankfully. Because that one would have been knocked out by Night Spear's 30 damage. The 30 to the bench. So I want to avoid that at all costs. And I do get to Portrait, thankfully, so I'm glad I got that Smeargle into play. I get the Portrait for an Oak's New Theory, 6 cards, and I get to use my supporter for the turn still, which is the benefit of Smeargle. Does not take up your supporter for the turn, so hopefully I draw Twins, and I do. So, this turn I will be able to play that Twins, get a Vileplume into play. I'll even be able to use Tropical Beach at the end of my turn, so this will be a really good turn for me. So, Twins, I will certainly get a rare candy, shut off those trainers immediately, and we will go from there. So, I'll probably grab a rare candy for sure, but what else do I want to get? I could get another Vanillish. That's option number 1. Could get another Twins. That's another option. So, what would you take in this spot? Think about it. I would actually take a rare candy and probably another Twins. That's probably the best way to go about it. I could take another Vanillish to avoid the scenario where I get too much damage on one of my Vanillishes. But I did decide to go for the Twins. That's just much more reliable. And I'll put down the other Oddish because I do have the Gloom in my hand. And then Tropical Beach to draw 3 cards. Okay. Now my opponent, he's staring down the Vileplume. That cannot be a good sight. And for me, this is looking really good. What can go wrong at this point? I'm going to be set up. I'm only going to give up 2 prizes, pretty much. And there's really no better spot than that. I have a Twins in my hand that I have not played yet. So next turn, I'll be able to get that Vanillix into play. And as long as I don't flip 4 tails, nothing can really go wrong, I don't think. And he actually decides to target the Oddish with the 30 damage. I don't really agree with that, and a top deck of Vanillish, which is perfect. But I do not agree with doing 30 to the Oddish, because you should just do 30 to the Vanillish. Put it in range for a knockout. You'll put it at 60 damage, which means your next Darkrai, or even Terrakion, can get a knockout on the Vanilluxe. The way it is now, it only has 30 on it. It's got 130 hit points, so Night Spear and Retaliate from Terrakion, they're both going to be 10 damage short of knocking out a Vanilluxe. And you got to know I would not bench the Oddish unless I just had a way to evolve it. So there's no reason to go after that. Even Victini would have been a much better option, I believe, because that's not going to be able to evolve. And if you can take the Victini out of the equation, that's going to make things difficult for Vanilluxe. Vanilluxe becomes a lot worse if Victini is not in play, so questionable decision on the Night Spear. So right here, you're just going to see the same thing over and over and over. You're going to see Vanilluxe using Double Freeze, and it's all just going to depend on the flips at this point. There's really no special play my opponent could make to get out of this sort of thing. It's just, you're either paralyzed or you're not. He only got a 2 prize lead, which, as I've stated before, you need a much bigger lead with Darkrai in order to pull off a win. There's just no way around it. Darkrai, not very good against Vanilluxe. It's got 130 hit points. Darkrai only does 90. Sad times for Darkrai. So all you can do is play a supporter, maybe play an energy and pass. And here I'm just going to be drawing some more cards, trying to draw into some more stuff. I do get another water energy, so I will be able to get another Vanilluxe out if my active one gets knocked out. And I do flip 2 tails. Going to Victory Star here. And oh, quad tails. Now this is something I don't want to see, but just take a look. Doesn't really matter that much. If my opponent had done 30 to the active Vanilluxe, then yes, this would have mattered a lot. I would have been knocked out this turn. I would have lost 2 energy off my field, and that would have been a lot of resources gone. And yeah, that just would have been a bad situation for me. But here, what really will happen? He'll do 90 again, and that's about it. He won't really gain a whole lot of ground. Of course, he does get a free attack here, that he probably should not have had, because flipping 4 tails is very unlikely, but oh well. And looks like here he's going to hit the Victini for 30. Yeah, now imagine if he hit the Victini instead, or the Vanillux instead, he'd be taking a prize there. He would go up 3 prizes. This game would all of a sudden turn into something very manageable. But the way it is now, I just don't see it. So I'm going to double freeze again, and I'm going to paralyze him, which is great. Hopefully I don't flip 4 more tails again. Now that Victini is a target on my bench. I do not want to see that get knocked out. I do have a Seeker in my hand, so I might go ahead and play that soon, just to pick up the Victini. I'm kind of holding out hope that I draw a Blossom though, so I don't have to waste the Seeker on that. Because Blossom would use Hustle Step and take 10 damage off that Victini, taking it out of range for Night Spirit to knock it out. And looks like my opponent does get a Sky Arrow Bridge, takes out my Tropical Beach. And okay, so really he still can't do anything because he's paralyzed. And Vileplume shuts off trainers. Okay, you get the idea at this point. Games actually do become kind of straightforward and boring once this deck sets up. You would think Ice Cream would be a little more fun. You know, we all scream for ice cream, but it really does make people scream because they have to sit there and not do anything. And they just pass as their Pokemon slowly get frozen to death by 2 sadistic ice cream cones that can somehow float in midair. Now, at this point, my opponent is still only up 2 prizes, but that's going to change pretty quickly. He does not have a good way to deal with Vanillux, and I'm going to knock out this Darkrai next turn, hopefully. Take 2 prizes and we'll be tied at 4-4. Now, he will get the knockout on this in Vanillux, and if I don't have a way to heal damage from Victini or pick it up off my field, then he'll get 2 prizes, and that could actually turn out to be a big deal. I could actually lose then, but it looks like I have the Twins in my hand, so I'm going to go ahead and get Blossom here, I think, as long as it's in my deck, and it is. So, I can get Blossom, probably another Vanillite, and from here, there is really no way I'm going to lose this game. But the one thing I want to bring up is take a look at the timer. Now, at this point, we do not have much time left. Keep in mind, it's 60 minutes for the round. If I were to somehow lose this game, I would definitely lose the match. Because Darkrai, as you can see, he's ahead 2 prizes on me this far into the game. And I flip 2 tails here, and then I flip 2 heads, so never mind. But at this point in the game, I finally tied it up. And he's still actually going to take the lead on this next turn. So, say this was a game 3, I would lose because, well, time gets called, he'd be up a prize. My deck's too slow to do anything. I'm slow in the sense that my deck is 2 stage 2s, takes forever to set up. And I'm slow in the sense that it just takes forever for Double Freeze to knock out big basic Pokemon like Darkrai and Terrakion. So, a lot of stuff works against me when we get to sudden death, but fortunately this is game 2. I don't think I'll be losing this game because I'm just in such a great position at this point. But just to point out how scary it is playing in a 60-minute best 2 out of 3 environment. You know, if you had more time, that would not be an issue. I would like to see 75 minutes for best 2 out of 3, but here it's only 60 minutes, and you can kind of see the problems with using a slow deck in a 60-minute environment. So here, I should just be able to double freeze my way to victory, but let's say I just start flipping a whole bunch of tails, and I end up losing. I'm almost certainly going to lose the match, because in a Game 3 scenario, I just have no real shot of beating a Darkrai deck. It's just too fast. I'm not going to take too long to do anything. So, here my opponent does use Shaman, Celebration Wind. He realizes, alright, this Terrakion's just kind of dead in the water. I actually think he did that a little prematurely because, well, I could flip four tails, and then he'll want to retreat then and attack with something else. But he decides to move the energy off because he wanted to play N, and he wanted to Shaman first because he might not draw it off the end, which is understandable. And me flipping four tails probably isn't too likely anyway. Just something I would bring up though. If I do flip four tails and he doesn't have an energy to retreat, he cannot take advantage of it anymore. So that could be something to look out for. Draw Vanillux off of my 4 cards. Wasn't really a big deal. I would get the next one back with Rescue Energy anyway. We do see 2 tails, but then we see 2 heads. So Terrakion does have 10 hit points left. And, I mean, like I said, at this point, he still has to knock out 3 more Pokemon in order to win. I actually forgot to use Hustle Step. But I remember this time at least. Alright, that didn't end up making any difference at all. So I'll go for another Double Freeze. I'll roll Snake Eyes. And, 4 tails. So, like I said, if I just start flipping tails over and over, I could lose this game. But if you look at that, my opponent does not have a Dark Energy to give his Terrakion free retreat. So, even though I flip 4 tails, he actually can't take advantage of it. So kind of a lucky break for me that even when I got unlucky, my opponent couldn't capitalize. So right here, all he can do is promote Darkrai. He's kept his bench filled up quite a bit. I don't really like that because it doesn't give him the option to put down a Mewtwo and then use Shaman to move all of his energy to it. He's going to use Terrakion here. Just retaliate for 90, which is okay. But if he doesn't have another Terrakion to back that one up, I think you're better just using Darkrai. But that's alright. And it looks like I get double heads on Double Freeze. And here, we're tied in prizes. If I knock out this Terrakion without flipping 4 tails, I'm going to take the prize lead, and then the game is pretty much over from that point. So, really not much to say anymore. Besides, I'm going to just keep flipping, and we'll see if I knock stuff out. And that will be it. Once Vanillux gets set up, the game becomes very simple. You would think a deck with a lot of flips is fun, but it can actually be kind of boring because all your turns are just Double Freeze, your opponent, am I paralyzed? Okay, pass. And then I'll draw, and I'll Double Freeze. And then am I paralyzed? Okay, pass. And then, Double Freeze knocked you out. Okay, I get to attack. Then I'll Double Freeze. So, it's just a lot of monotony with this kind of a deck once you set up. So, I did knock out the Terrakion with 2 more heads. He's going to get a Night Spear to knock out this Vanillux. And he's going to do 30 to a benched one. It's not going to be too relevant, I don't think. I'll promote the new Vanillux. The other one goes back to my hand with Rescue Energy. So, once one gets knocked out, another one comes right back out. It's just an endless cycle of ice cream cones. And I'm going to Double Freeze. Big surprise. So as long as I don't get a bunch of tails here, I will be just fine. So, once again, going to hit him for 40. And let's see, he's got 140 hit points left. That's fine. I just need to Double Freeze 2 more times. And then I can actually attach that water and Frost Breath for the win. Just do 60. So I hit him for 40 once again. So now he has 100 hit points left. I just need 40 more damage and I can Frost Breath to win. And you can see my opponent's just like, yeah, all my cards are trainers. I can't play them. And I'm paralyzed, so go. So I'll Double Freeze again. 2 tails. And Victory Star. And 2 heads. So right now this game's over unless he plays an N. then I could just flip tails endlessly. But otherwise, I had the water in my hand to just Frost Breath for the win. And there we go. 60 damage, straight up, no flips involved. And that will be that. So, you can see how long the series took based on the timer. There's no way I'm going to win a third game. So, this is just showing the dangers of a slow deck like Vanillux and a best 2 out of 3 match where there's only a 60-minute time limit. And yeah, that's all there is to it. So, I did manage to win this series 2-0. It's pretty straightforward against Darkrai. As long as you set up quickly enough, you're going to win the match. There's no real way Darkrai can do anything about it unless they set up really quickly. There's no real tricks that they have to get around Vileplume or Paralysis. So, once I set up, it's a pretty good matchup. So, I will actually be moving on to the finals with this Vanillux deck. So, stay tuned for the finals. Thanks for watching, and we'll be back with the finals soon.